Can you use your yellow umbrella?
Everything's been said already. Rien me l'a demandé, j'ai dit,
Ok, parfait.
tu répètes ce que tu as dit.
Ben, c'est ça, on est en même longueur d'onde, tu vois, c'est bon, hein? And there's a slow,
Ladder time. Well, yeah, here. This is okay. Good.
Nice setup.
Are we ready? هون قد واحد جوكو صورهم سيس يعني قزي كان سريو يجت كهو نوجي ندجت كوين ستار هنا ناتا روني. Okay, before we broke for lunch, we were into rights of the people of the Confederacy. We came to an end on that section, and now we're coming into the rights and ceremonies protected. So, if there's anything, we'll take a minute. If anybody had reflected on what was said this morning, if there's any question or anything you want to address, then now is the time. Again, we won't send a fella around this time. We'll just, if somebody wants, then we'll take it from there. Okay, now let's make sure everybody else. What? Okay, well, if you want to adjust, we're going in that direction, so you know you're before him, so if you want to adjust, now is the time. There's just two things I thought I should address quickly. Is that there's a forgery that's going to be projected. In other words, false accusation, or I would say almost I was going to say hijackery. Somebody's identity is hijacked, and then it's projected out to the world as the true identity of the people. Like, we can give all kinds of examples. We were speaking of the artist that was referred to this morning, Lee Hall. What I felt was necessary to reflect upon during lunch was that since it's been very clear in my mind, made very clear that he's not coming from a traditional longhouse perspective, then anything else that this person wants to project, he could project himself as being the president of Mars or something, okay? And I just like to point out that there's people from all over the world, from all kinds of whatever traditions. They could be political, they could be spiritual. And if someone is hijacking, uh, or misrepresenting his traditional, what is he going to do with someone else's? And I just want you to realize that I've seen in too many occasions where I come from, people misrepresenting the Japanese. I think we started addressing that yesterday. I really appreciated that. But I see a lot of people misrepresenting other people's spiritualities without having any idea of really what the true ceremony is. Now, it's not false to point out where institutions have broken down, or there have been abuses, there have been contradictions. That's totally necessary through the law. But it's also necessary through the law, I think, to, in fact, I know, to point out where someone is misrepresenting. So if someone is out there saying all kinds of things in my name and making my life miserable and my name mud, and then people just start building on it. Well, look at what that stone did. Look at what he's saying. Look at his spirituality. Okay, when I totally misrepresent it, I'm trying to be true to both sides of the true wampum and sides of and senses of historical spirituality have their histories, and they have to be understood, and the ceremonies have to be better understood, I believe, on both sides at the appropriate time. But I just wanted to point out that somebody that wants to paint themselves in any way, especially, at the time of their passing, can say anything they want to say. And they don't have to defend it amongst the people anymore, because they're not there anymore to have that job to do. And I just thought I'd share that. The other thing, too, is that I saw this film, um, uh, Writing from the Bear, last night, that I was just mentioning, from the Kiowa author uh, N. Scott Momaday. Now, he speaks English. I think he speaks Kiowa a little bit too, but he's known as an English American author. So, for the people, he's got publisher. I mean, they're going to present him that way. But I am just thinking back to what I saw on Facebook earlier, where I'm trying to write about this Scott Momaday guy, and then who's a truly good writer, and I think a good soul, so to speak. Again, I come across a post on Facebook by one of our Venezuelan Solidarity friends, I believe, who is quoting Jimmy Carter as saying quite recently that he's the 39th president of the United States.
that the United States is the most war. Like, I can't remember what it's written. You just look at my Facebook, you'll see what Jimmy Carter said, as quoted by the Common Dreams um, uh, electronic newspaper. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's not a good, it's a left wing or whatever. But I'm sure that that's what he said. And he's pointing out that China is less warlike, much less warlike, or warring, as Stuart pointed out, as the United States, okay? So sometimes you can't always say exactly the right word or something, but I think people can, read through the lines and know that that is meant to mean that the United States is a warring nation, has been doing it for, and Carter himself supposedly said for all but about 15 years of its existence, it's been in that state of war. That's the president of the United States that's saying that that's the reality that he knows. Now, the last thing there is he says, and the article says that under his tenure, there wasn't a war. And I think that's worth checking out. There was the Iran-Contra affair, or the Iran-Contra, no, that was actually after him, the Contra thing, but the Iranian hostage taking, he had to deal with that, right? But I think maybe the historians or whomever that are trying to really be truthful about the job they do will look at him differently in light of what he said. If that's true, it's worth considering. So,
Okay, before we start back, just to address what you just said about identity theft, basically. Anybody can steal anybody else's identity. There's cultural theft that happens all the time. Today, you see completely non-native people, white people who are, you see them on social media, you'll see them beating our drums and dancing around. That is, anybody can do that. You're not going to get arrested. Nobody's going to come out and say, hey, you stop doing that. Because when people are doing that, there's normally or usually not any native people around. So that is identity theft, because when that person does that without identifying that I do this out of respect for this nation, this is what they showed me to do, and I am adopting their way of peace. Unless they do that, then they are just completely disrespectful and carrying out identity theft. Now, today, in the non-native world, if somebody took your personal information, like your social insurance number, took your bank account or something, and they started using it, that's what they call today what constitutes identity theft. And that identity theft is a crime, punishable under law. Well, that is something that today is limited to things of economics. They don't care. Law does not care about anything else, your identity being stolen in any other way, somebody misrepresenting you, using your name or whatever. Law does not care about that. Law, in the non-native world, only thing it cares about is when it infringes within the realm of economics. And so this is the only time that you'll see identity theft, where the individual has something stolen from them, their credit card, their social security number. That this is the only time that the non-native law will consider identity theft. But as you can see, all throughout the law, it actually deals with that. When you see the chiefs or anyone misrepresenting, that is identity theft. When you see somebody misrepresenting the truth, standing up and talking about somebody else without substantiation, then that's misrepresenting, and that is a form of identity theft. When the guy that you started talking about, Louis Hall, when he created the Warrior Society, that was identity theft. Stole the identity of the people of the Longhouse, which is people of peace, matrilineal, and changed everybody who's ever walked that path of Warrior Society. They can claim all they want, Longhouse, but the fact is that they dysfunction under male dominance. They were all controlled under their so-called war chief. And so within the Great Law of Peace, you know that the war chief does not have this kind of authority, does not have that kind of place to have that kind of influence or control over the minds of the people. So when somebody rises like that, it is identity theft because they are misleading the people away from, like what happened here, people who would be interested in longhouse, traditional. Instead, they were led down the path of corruption and warrior society, war mentality, male dominance. So that is identity theft. There's identity theft that happens all the time. But how you can tell or deal with that, how you know, like if you have two opposing viewpoints, how you can easily determine which one is legal, which one is within law, is the one that can substantiate their position. Of course, you'll see one will always run away, like what we identified to you earlier. Warrior society mentality, that is Mohawk mentality. Mohawks today have become run away from the problem type of people, as opposed to what Ganyaga were, is bound together under constitution, under law, meaning we have our council process, our Guyana Recital Goa is the determining factor in all things. But if you pull yourself out of the council process, then there's no Guyana Recital Goa. There's no getting to the truth. After that, there's only corruption. So, like us, like what we've said ever since 1973, we stood in Grand Council with our position. We'll stand in any council with our position. We do not run from it. But you will see all others run from it. They'll open their mouths while they are not in the arena. They'll open their mouths to have influence over others, to lie to them. But if it came time for actual discussion, you'll never see them. They'll run away because they have fear of what the truth is. When you're misrepresenting, you'll always have fear of what the truth is. And even if that person doesn't realize that you're misrepresenting, the fact is that when it came time, or when it comes time to stand for what they are saying, they cannot. They will not be able to because their position is full of holes. So, anyways, misrepresentation, identity theft can take place all the time. It takes place all the time, every day. It's a matter of the individual being able to determine or establish the process of how to deal with that. How to, when you know there's two sides right there, and one of them is lying, which means you can't tell which one is lying. You know, it's that, like in the labyrinth there, you have two heads. One head always tells the truth, and one head always tells a lie. So when it's that way, one head is always lying. You can't tell which one is telling the truth, which one is lying. So when you're in a situation like that, when you cannot tell what the truth is, then this is where the structure of law, if applied, if adhered to, you will always be able to get to the core truth of any issue. Always be able to. Common sense is easy for anybody to utilize. It's easy for anybody to apply. So once somebody uses common sense to start determining a position on something that you have to discover, again, like between two sides, it's very easy. All it is a test. That's all. Like all of us, we are tested every day. You're put to the test. Somebody would come here and say to me, like if they see me on Facebook, they might say, "Oh, look at him. He's calling down the Warriors, but he won't do that in public. He's a big chicken, whatever." Hey, I don't care. I'll do that anyway. I do it all the time. You know, if somebody came here and said, "You're a lying piece of whatever," you know, I'll say, "Fine, state your case." I have no problem when somebody comes to me when there is a dispute. I have no problem in addressing the dispute on anything. Any of you that have been around long enough, you know that I got no issues about discussing anything openly, public. No problems. When people are stupid enough even to bring up my personal life, that's where I got really no problems. I enjoy that. Bring up my personal life. Come on, let's talk about it. No problem. Bring up politics, issues of what has happened within the Ganyangahaga or the Five Nations or the Native world. I got no problem discussing those things. You will never see us run away from that forum. But you will always see the corrupted run away from that forum. Always avoid discussing the truth, getting to the facts. So it's easy to determine when somebody is in that realm of identity theft or misrepresentation, which is the same thing. All you got to do again is stick to what law is, and no matter how long it takes, it could take a lifetime, it could take 10 lifetimes. The truth, no matter what, is going to prevail. The others, no matter what, like what was said earlier, that one lie leads to another. So eventually, the person gets caught in their own lies. They cannot perpetuate a lie forever. And as long as somebody is there hammering away with the truth, the moment that that lie breaks down, the truth will be able to tear down whatever false perceptions that they put up out there upon anybody. Anyways, yeah, okay, we'll continue. Now we're into the rights and ceremonies protected. Rights, Wampum 97. Or was that 98? Whatever.
97.
The rights and ceremonies of each nation shall remain undisturbed and shall continue as before, because they were given by the people of old times as useful and necessary for the good of people. Okay, here, well, you're identifying, of course, the rites, the ceremonies that the Five Nations had prior to the establishment of the Great Peace. So, what are those ceremonies? Everybody knows that all the nations had all the all the Five Nations had the four sacred ceremonies. The four sacred ceremonies was not enough to hold the people in peace. And so, after the people fell apart and sunk into war, then the Ganyanada Goa is the thing that restored the four sacred ceremonies. So, the rites and ceremonies of old, all the nations, because they all come from one family, had all the same ceremonies. This is the reason why you can go into Onondaga territory and you'll be in a strawberry ceremony and you know they're going to be carrying out the Stoagoa the same way that we do. The only thing that is slightly different is the different versions of that song, the way that the people sing it. Depending on which territory you're in, as you know, like the difference between Ganawagi and Akwesasne is in Akwesasne, they have a lot of slurs and a lot of L's. Like Gazita Rorlux. It's more of an L as opposed here, Gazita Rorlux. It's more pronunciated. So this is the only difference in the different territories, as was identified earlier on in the law, that the only thing that constitutes different territories is different tongues, different languages. And so those different tongues have a different way of saying the things that you say. Somebody's got an accent. So there's a little bit of a adjustment or a twist on the thing that they're saying, but it's the same thing as what is in the other nations. So Astoagoa, woman's dance, all the ceremonies that are part of the deity Oniwage, that all of these ceremonies have been from before the establishment of the Great Peace, and so they continue right up until today. Now, some of the old ceremonies that it's not that you have to have a structured ceremony in place already to identify it, that it's a ceremony that comes from before the establishment of the Great Peace. When you know of the ways of the people, the structures, the way they conduct themselves, you'll know that, okay, like take for instance, a debt ceremony, debt rites. You'll be alive for who knows how long, 100 years. You'll never have that ceremony performed for you. It's only one time you'll have it performed for you. You're dead. And so, you know that, well, that ceremony in your life has been dormant. It hasn't been there. You never used it. You never seen it. So it's not to say that ceremony does not exist. That ceremony does exist when the circumstances arise. Same thing as within law. There are parts of this law, whole sections, the law in its entirety, that has a position on absolutely everything. Now, until you run into that corruption, you'll never know, because well, you never had, like, let's say, for instance, none of you, nobody here, knock on wood, is wearing a cast on their leg. How come? How come nobody's wearing a cast on their leg? Because your leg ain't broken. But if your leg is broken, then you put a cast on your leg. So, normal conditions, you'd never have a cast on your leg. Only under certain extenuating circumstances would you have a cast on your leg. And so the same thing, only under certain circumstances are certain ceremonies carried out. Now, those ceremonies would be dormant in your mind. You've never seen it, you never heard of it, so you would think it's not a ceremony. No. When the circumstance arises and you utilize law, you could pull a ceremony out of time that hasn't been in place for hundreds of years. So the rites and ceremonies that are protected is, yes, the ceremonies that were from before, but the main thing that it's telling you is, what is it that's protecting those rites and ceremonies? It's the law. It's the Guyana Rasura Goa that's protecting those, that's telling you that this is the right of the people. And so, do not forget that when the law is talking about these ceremonies, let's say just these 4 ceremonies right here, the law is talking about that. But don't forget, it's the law talking about it. So the law would be the whole body in relation to these 4 fingers that I got here. So the law itself is the ceremony that is protected, because again, you're applying law, following law in your everyday life, something will pop up and the law will determine that, okay, you have to do something at this time for whatever circumstance. And so the ceremonies that are protected from before was the 4 sacred ceremonies. The great law of peace is rooted in the 4 sacred ceremonies. So not just those ceremonies that the people used to carry out are what's protected, but the law itself, which stems from those ceremonies, which will determine at some point in time in the future, you will do a ceremony, which is where, like we identified in 2017, that we have done our final ceremony. Now, what does that mean, a final ceremony? Well, it means it's the last one in a cycle of ceremonies. That's all it means. It doesn't mean we're dead at that point and this is our final ceremony. No. The final ceremony is like if you're following the cycles of the year, you start off at the new year. You'll end up one day before the new year, and that will be your final day before the new year, before it renews. And so you'll end up at a final ceremony in the end of that cycle. So for us, as you know, in 2017, there was a final ceremony that we had done. Now, that's not a final ceremony within the cycle of a year. It's not a final ceremony within the cycle of a person's life. That's a final ceremony in the great cycle of Sky Woman, within the great spiral of when we look into the nighttime sky and we see the body of Sky Woman, we know that she has a beginning of a cycle and she has an end. Now, if you can't say, well, where is her beginning? How do you know where it began when you're looking at the cycles of creation on that scale? It's billions of years, millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years. So you can say from this point, anybody can say, well, how do you know where you start from? Well, it's quite simple. When you know that you're dealing with the body of a woman, All you have to do is look at the cycle that in her small cycles that is repetitive. Like if we're looking at a woman, you could say, "Where's her new year?" If you're in the middle of June with her, where's her new year? You might not know. All you got to do is look at her moon. Look at her moon that visits her in June. Look at the moon that visited her just before, and look at the moon that's visiting her right after, and you'll be able to deduce very easily the same way that an investigator will go to a murder scene today without having to be at the murder, and that investigator will be able to deduce what happened. And you could even, from your investigation, you could extrapolate who has committed the murder. So it's easy to deduce the cycles, where it begins, where it ends, just from looking at a very tiny part of the huge cycle. And so, because of this, we were able to determine that we done our final ceremony in Guanaditsta. Just happened to be at the total solar eclipse in 2017 August. Anyways, so there is the end of a cycle that you would not perform that ceremony, not for 25,000 years. Well, how would we know that it's the end of 25,000 year cycle? All you got to do is know law. If you understand law, if you know the Guyana Suragoa, you follow what the Guyana Suragoa tells you to do. And so the Guyana Suragoa is, again, when we know that it stems from everything we discussed, the formation of the league, the creation story, it stems from the turtle. On the turtle's back, this is our map. This is our calendar. So when you know the ceremonies and you combine that with that map, with that calendar, you'll be able to easily determine where we are in time and in space. And then you know who you are stemming from that. So you can identify who you are, where you are, when you are. And when you identify when you are, then you will know the end of the cycle, or you will be able to deduce where you are in that cycle. And so we did not know galactic movements, waterversal movements on the, what everybody else calls the universe level, on the waterverse level. We did not know these things, those cycles. They were beyond too big for us to see. But we know the cycle here. And the cycle here was easy to deduce that was time for us to do the final ceremony, which was never done except for 25,000 years ago. Just like you, when the skin falls off your body, imagine if that time frame is 25,000 years from today when your skin is renewing itself to when it falls off tomorrow. Just imagine, it's not a day, just imagine it's 25,000 years. So you know that your skin falls off 25,000 years later, and when it does, you know that it's repeating the cycle where it began 25,000 years ago. So it's easy to, again, identify a ceremony that you would never have seen in your entire life, that nobody would have ever seen. But the cycle, it's a real part of the cycle. Whether or not you were alive, maybe we were not alive, maybe we were alive in dinosaur form at the time. But regardless, our bloodlines went through that cycle because our bloodlines is a bloodline of our Mother Earth. So whatever happened upon our Mother Earth, it is recorded in us. We have the knowledge of that. We have access to that particular thing where you don't have to think about replenishing the skin that's falling off of your feet. All you have to do is just stay alive, and naturally it replenishes the skin that's fallen off your feet. And when it does that again, it is repeating a cycle. So in reality, like we've said many times, is that Guyana Go will give you knowledge of absolutely everything. It'll give you knowledge of things that you have no way of knowing about, but it will give you a knowledge of the reality of creation. Nothing is left up to guesswork. Everything is there, predetermined way in advance. You, as you know, are predetermined how you look now, even before you were born. It was predetermined. Once you're born, everybody looks at you and you look like a newborn baby. You didn't come out your mother looking like the way that you do now, looking like stone at whatever age you're at. None of us did, but it was predetermined. It's in our DNA as to we're going to be male or female and what we're going to end up looking like. If we're going to have 3 legs or if we're going to have 2. It's all predetermined. So it is no guesswork here. And so the ceremonies itself that are protected are everything in existence that it has taken for us to get here. And so in your evolution, you cannot remember when you were 1 year old, unless you can, I don't know. But when you were 1 year old, you were repeating a process that you had already seen when you were born. Now, you don't see it the same way because you're not born again the same way that you were the first time when you're 1 year old. But at 1 year old, you're coming to the renewal of a cycle. So in all actuality, everything inside of you, everything that keeps your motor running is doing the exact same thing as it did before, even though it may look different. From the 1900s and a cheap little 4-cylinder engine that is not balanced, that is just sputtering along until what we got today, where we have engines so advanced now that you can't even hear the thing running, where compared to an engine of 100 years ago, that it may have had only 10 horsepower 100 years ago. Now that engine that you can't even hear running, that runs so smooth, it has hundreds of horsepower. So it's a matter of knowing that this is a repetitive cycle, and as it repeats, it evolves. But its evolution always happens within the same cyclical motion. So therefore, again, people get locked into saying, well, this was our ceremonies, and there's never any other ceremony. No, when you are protecting the ceremonies of old, you are protecting things that you will not know until you get to that point of renewal or of where the cyclical motions or movements are renewing, and only then will you become aware of the ceremony that you have to perform. Okay, 98. It shall be the duty of the chiefs of each clan within each nation to confer at the approach of the time of the midwinter thanksgiving and to notify the people of the approaching festival. They shall hold a council over the matter and arrange its details and begin the thanksgiving 5 days after the moon of Discana is new. The people shall assemble at the appointed place, and the nephews shall notify the people of the time and place. From the beginning to the end, the chiefs and clan mothers shall preside over the thanksgiving and address the people from time to time. This is identifying something to you that you are not going to find in any other peoples on the planet, in the political systems. Our political system identifies that our political leaders have to reside over the ceremonies. Now, this is the equivalent of, imagine this guy they call the president, or a guy they call the premier of so-called United States or so-called Canada. Imagine Donald Trump or Justin Trudeau when when it's time to carry out the strawberry, imagine them calling together all of the people to say, now it is time for us to give thanks for this cycle, whether it's the strawberry or anything else. This shows you that there is a stupidity, an actual insanity in the non-native world where you still continue to accept, you condone it, the separation of your spirituality from your political. Now imagine your political decisions not based on your spiritual beliefs, your spiritual reality. Well, your political decisions then will compromise your spiritual beliefs, your spiritual reality. This is the stupidity in the non-native world, that you have so-called political systems that separate themselves from their moral compass. And this is the reason why you see within the non-native political structures of a bunch of fools arguing, fights breaking out in parliamentary buildings, parliament around the world. You'll see disrespect. Like here in so-called Canada, you look at the parliament. The only time there was ever any kind of respect ever projected in that building is when there was this blonde guy last year or 2 years ago who was speaking in Ganyangeha. He was a white man speaking in Ganyangeha, the floor of Parliament. That is the only time that those parliamentarians conducted themselves with respect. Never do they do that on their own. What they do is they fight, they argue, they heckle. When somebody else is standing up talking about an opposing viewpoint, they'll speak under their voice, they'll speak over them, they'll disrespect them to try to block people from listening to them. They'll be calling them down, they'll be laughing at them. This is the corruption in your society, where you know that, for instance, within our council, that you know that a chief, as it's identified in law, we went over this I don't know, sometime in this process, that a chief cannot even grimace if somebody is saying something that they don't agree with or something. You cannot even roll your eyes. You cannot even shrug your shoulders like this. You can't go like this, like, oh, here we go again. You can't do anything like that. But this, of course, as you know, this happens in your parliaments, in the non-native halls of government, that's what they want to call them, all around the world, because it's all rooted in disrespect, because it's been separated. Your political has been separated from your spiritual. So you have no moral guidance. Now, in your world, the non-native world, it is justified by saying separate church and state. Well, of course, that makes sense because church is corrupted, and your state, in order to run proper, must be separate from that corruption. But this is the corruption that everybody is subjected to, that you believe that church and state, you believe that church represents spiritual, when it doesn't. You believe that your state represents political, when it doesn't. This is identity theft, what we were talking about. Today, your church is, well, ever since its concept, your church is a lie. It's a misrepresentation. It's an identity theft from the people. Your political is a lie. It's an identity theft. When you know, in particular, we'll go to something we talked about here a couple of days ago. In 1995, here in so-called Quebec, when they had the referendum, you know that that was it was a lie. It was a setup. It was a fixed vote. You know that no matter what, the people who wanted to separate, that there was no way that you could have had a fair vote. It was impossible. So that meant that your political misrepresents. You know your political misrepresents, where you just in today you look at a couple of months back where Justin Trudeau all of a sudden became a business, where he turned you, every so-called tax-paying citizen in so-called Canada, turned your political will into an economic force, where by him buying the pipeline that couldn't get built by the company, because the company had to deal with the native people and they couldn't deal with the native people. So Justin Trudeau misrepresented you by then buying that company for, I don't know, I think it was $4 billion or something like that, which nobody in so-called Canada gave him the approval to do that. Absolutely no one, not even in Parliament. He did not even have a parliamentary discussion on it, to the point of where it would be, hey, do you think we should do this? What do you think? No, the parliamentary discussion was not that. It was, this is what we're going to do. And anybody said anything, it didn't really matter. So you're misrepresented. When you're misrepresented, well, you have identity theft. So Justin Trudeau is an identity thief. He stole the identity of all the so-called Canadians who maybe did not want to be in the pipeline business, especially when you consider that now so-called Canadians in the world have this image that they project, that you are peaceful people, that you are people of law. Well, that's a lie. You know you're not people of law because just through this one simple little thing that Justin Trudeau did, that it's not law. It's a dictatorship. You're dictated to by Justin Trudeau. He is a mini king, a dictator. And so you have nothing that is protected within your world. Your rights, your ceremonies are not protected. Your spiritual belief is not protected. In this level of buying a pipeline, your spiritual belief would be what you believe about pipelines. So if you believe no, what you know that all of so-called Canada, they don't believe in pipelines. The only ones who do are the people who produce the oil. That's the only ones who believe in pipelines. Otherwise, you know that everybody who claims to be good people in so-called Canada, you know that you are looking at and dealing with a reality of what's happening in the environment. And so you know that people are starting to move away from these corrupted things like fossil fuel burning engines. You know, they're moving away from here in Quebec, they moved away from nuclear power. You know, so people are moving away from these things. So how can you attribute Justin Trudeau's decision to buy the pipeline to representing so-called Canadians? It doesn't. So here again is identity theft. Here is where you have nothing protected. Nothing is protected for you. You have a supposed constitution, which they call the Canadian Charter of Rights. It is not a constitution. Anybody with a half a brain will tell you that is not a constitution. You cannot have a constitution when your leader that you elect democratically goes and pledges his allegiance to that woman he calls the queen, and also pledges his allegiance to the corruption of Israel. So you know that you are not in a democracy. And that means that your leader just does anything they want, and to be able to be in a state where your leader does anything you want, you know that your constitution is not a constitution. And if it is, you know that it is not protected. So you have nothing that is protected. The people have no rights, no nothing that is protected. But here within the law, it identifies right from the spiritual basis where it is protected, how it is protected. So if there's nothing on that, we'll continue. 99. It shall be the duty of the clan mothers and chiefs, managers of the Thanksgiving festivals, to do all that is needed for carrying out the duties of the occasion, in accordance with the outcome of the previous bowl game. You know what that means? How the ceremonies run. And today, within the Christian people, the handsome Lakers, it's not done that way. They don't go based on the bowl game, where you know the bowl game determines who is going to be doing all the work in the next cycle. If when the Wolves win the bowl game, you know that winning does not mean that we sit back and the others do all the work. No, if the Wolves and the Turtles win the bowl game, you know what that means? We have to do all the work. So where it says, depending on the outcome of the previous bowl game, that yes, the Chiefs and Clan Ballers will be managing this, but it will be, again, if the Wolves won, it's going to be coming from within the Wolf Clan. But like I said, what the Christians do, the handsome Lakers, what they've affected into the minds of the people now, they have stolen identity theft, stolen law, and corrupted it to the point of where today you have these jokers that are called fake keepers. Now, these fake keepers, whatever the hell that is, that's a non existent thing within the Guyana Recital door. This is a Christian thing. Keepers of the faith, protectors of the realm, that comes directly from their queen. Now, they are the ones that have exclusive management over the ceremonies that belong to the people, which means the ceremonies is how they manipulate the people, which means there are no ceremonies that are protected, no rights, because the ceremonies belong to the people. They do not belong to the heads. They do not belong to fake keepers. Fake keepers are a corruption. There is no such thing as this. And you know that it's based on the bowl game, who's going to run the next ceremony. Okay, so if the Wolf Clan won, then you know what? Comes time, Wolf Clan is going to meet within the Wolf Clan, and we're meeting with everybody. We're meeting with little kids. We're meeting with adults. We're not meeting with just the heads. And so with all those people, we meet and we talk about the next ceremony. And within that next ceremony, we look at, well, who is going to carry out the Astoa Gore? Because at different times, you will utilize a different person to carry out the Astoa Goa. You will not use the same person all the time. And for different ceremonies, you know, you'll certain one would be appointed depending on the way that they sing it. And so this is not decided by the heads or a phony fake keeper. This is decided by the people. The ceremonies belong to the people. They do not belong to fake keepers. Fake keepers are a corruption that get in the way of the people. They steal the identity of the people. They steal the spirituality from those people, from the rest of the people. So the chiefs and clan mothers are the ones that are supposed to preside over the ceremony. So you know what? As was identified, that qualifications to be a chief is that a person, to be qualified, they have to know all the ceremonies. They have to know every part of the ceremony. You cannot have somebody in a position of chieftainship title if they do not know the ceremony, because then it identifies in here rights and ceremonies protected. How is that chief going to protect the ceremony if they don't know the ceremony? It's impossible. The chief ends up leaving it to a so-called fake keeper, which is exactly in the non-native world, which you look at when kings and rulers always had these spiritual advisors. And the spiritual advisor would be the one that would actually determine the kings and rulers as to when they're going to go to war. This is what fake keepers are about. They're not about ceremonies. They're about controlling the people, taking away their identity, and leading the people down the path of corruption, which is, no matter what degree you look at it, it is war. It is a corruption in the people that takes them out of their original identity and puts them into a subdued state. Okay, if there's anything on this, if not, we'll move on.
It's just I wanted to just underscore again, repeat that identity theft can take place on both sides of the wampum. Someone that is not for peace whatsoever, you're going to destroy the peace. I will destroy the peace, or he or she will destroy the peace wherever he, she, or I can, right? And that's we're talking about Confederacy. We're talking about here, but they're in a relationship. The people of the Confederacy are in a relationship to a wampum relationship with the other side of the wampum belt, the non-native people. Someone that is out to destroy the peace among his own people, it's probably likely that person could be out to destroy the peace on the other side. So it's going to be like false representation on both sides of the wampum belt. And that's what I'm trying to point out, because having other spiritual, Buddhist, Christian traditions, Shinto tradition, which is not even considered a religion, it's a way of life in Japan. Anybody on the face of the planet that wants to destroy an ordinary person's opportunity to understand something new, like Shintoism, can just start saying anything, and playing on their, ignorance. So this is why I wanted to. And coming from a tradition out west, where I knew that within the people that I was attending, my mother and her husband were in a small church, a small country church, and it was a Protestant church, but they're right next to Mascochise, yeah? And other than one or two farmers that lived right next door, that were the next door neighbors to the Mines family, in spite of all the good words about not taking from anyone else's cup but your own, not stealing, not misrepresenting it, false accusations, right? It's really good on Sunday, but then nobody's got the courage to go like 2 miles or 10 miles down the road and talk to the people who everybody in this continent knows whose lands were stolen. Eh? And I came back here because I realized that it was really only through what I had started learning about the Great Law that I would have the tools by which I could. And so this connection out west, not just with the Mine family, but some of the non-natives too, has been taking place for 20 years. Eh? But I know that there's contradictions in the so-called church. Okay, uh, uh, but at the same time, someone that has no understanding, no interest in telling the truth about what is done uh, on a daily basis, I would say in a basic way, I think it's going to twist everything. So uh, that twisted mind, or twist on both sides of the alphabet, is what I want to say. I think the challenge for me is to not be afraid, not to lack courage, to say the Christians that I've known, the Buddhists that I've known, and I've seen quite a few recently out in Western Canada and even in Montreal. They're trying to catch up. They're trying to learn about the Guyana Soil War. And they're not afraid. And you saw that through Louise. Eh? She's not afraid to say, listen, I know I'm coming from a place that you say, and I'm not going to disagree on many points, is corrupted or has had a corrupt history. But that's not preventing me from doing what we're actually being asked to do, to try and clean up, to try and speak the truth on the other side of the wampum belt. And they might be spiritual people, like the true Christians, I would call them, or they might be like totally lay people. They're not interested in Christianity and so on and so forth. And they might not be interested in the great law of peace either. But if you can reach a person that's interested in hearing the truth, that's what we hope to do. And I guess the only way to do it is to speak my own truth. So I'll reiterate that certain people that might be listening in, they might not understand sometimes the way the words are used here to talk about them, because they say, hey, I have a farmer friend out there. He wouldn't have stole like Bubba. He wouldn't have stole a penny from anybody. Super honest guy. At the same time, he never had too much exposure to Native peoples. So us liaisons, people that can make a difference, we try and get the truth, try and apply the law to ourselves first and foremost, but to people that we hope we can give a demonstration to a certain degree of how the law works, or back here to say that a true Christian, true Buddhist, a true spiritual person will say it's not my institution that is the important thing. It's not even the words that I'm saying, it's the spirit. It's how I'm trying to act according to that spirit. So,
Yeah, I think, well, not I think, but what you are talking about, it doesn't apply just to this wampum here. You can't uh, extrapolate what you're saying just out of this wampum. It's in the whole law throughout. It is a basic, common decency that people used to at one time have, but now a corruption that people have is to where now they are, without realizing, actually stealing things. Like what you said, the example of people that ranchers out west, You know, non-native people, good people, they would never steal a cent off of anybody, but they're on stolen land. So there's a contradiction there. Now, that contradiction is because within their own system that they do not have mechanisms such as this that identifies rights and ceremonies protected, or rights of the people, or rights of the people in relation to their chieftainship titles. They don't have that in the non-native society. Imagine if you had rights protected of the people in relation to the prime minister of the country. Then it would mean that any person at any instance can utilize that mechanism and correct the so-called prime minister Justin Trudeau, when in just this little thing where he is stealing not only from the native people, but he's stealing from so-called Canadians when he bought that pipeline, stealing from everybody. You got no protections within your society, within your government. That's what you want to call government. You got nothing to, again, protect you from the corruption of thieves, of liars. This is because you are in a corrupt, thieving, lying pirate system. As the pirates that first came here 500 years ago, you know the terms and conditions under which they came here. This never changed. When have you ever seen or heard of the terms and conditions as to which the first Europeans stepped foot here up until now? When have you ever heard of a change, an official change in policy? Never. Never. Let's see, Stephen Harper apologized for kidnapping, raping, murdering children. He said he's sorry. Now, that is not a correction. Of course not. But saying just the mere to say those words is a corruption. To be able to think that you can say, "Oh, sorry for kidnapping your kids. Sorry for molesting them. Sorry we raped your kids after we kidnapped them. Sorry that we murdered a bunch of your kids also." Imagine what would give a person the audacity to be able even just to come out and to say these things. Imagine you think of yourself saying this. Say it to the person next to you. Sorry for kidnapping your children. Sorry that we raped a bunch of them. Sorry that a bunch of them ended up getting killed also. No. Try to project yourself as being a good person when you say that to the person next to you. When you're looking, knowing that you're talking about their children. This is where, again, it's like beating a dead horse. We could just keep saying over and over and over how corrupt your society is. How you are subjected to a bunch of lying, murdering, raping thieves. Where does that exist in the world? In the history of the world? Isolate that group of people. What would you call them? A bunch of murdering, raping thieves. Well, in your history, they're predominant. They're called pirates. It's piracy. You live under piracy. There is not a single person on the planet who does not live under piracy. You know, like here in so-called Canada, you think that you're a country of laws just because your politicians say that, and because you know that if you break a law, the cops are going to arrest you and throw you in jail. But what law are you under? Most people do not know. You think you're under a criminal code of Canada. No, it's not true. The law that you are under is Admiral law. Go to the Supreme Court of Canada and look at what their motto is, or their what they claim. As soon as you walk into the Supreme Court of Canada, you'll see their mace there, and which gives them their authority, and you'll see it's Admiral law. What is Admiral law? You know, it's law of the high seas. Okay, are you on the high seas here? How could law of the high seas apply in Manitoba, in Ontario? Maybe parts of Quebec, maybe parts of British Columbia, but not in Ontario. Well, unless you go to James Bay, not in Manitoba, not in Saskatchewan, not in Alberta. How could Admiral law be the law of the entire population? It's because you are pirates. That's all. That's the only reason why you have Admiral law. Law of the high seas. Who was in control of the high seas? Britain. Who started piracy? Britain. You can look in history and you can see where piracy actually started. Piracy, as you know, is about economics. Now, if you're going and you're stealing somebody else's, let's say they got a boat full of grain or something, it's not the same as stealing something that is rooted in economics. Things have changed when trade became overpowered by economics. And you can look in your own history and you will see how special interest groups connected to, well, it was the Rothschilds actually, who in Britain, when they started at the start of their stock exchange, that the Rothschilds had pirate ships go out and raid the merchant ships that would leave Britain and go to mainland. And then those merchant ships, not knowing where these pirates came from, they then sought out protection from Britain because that's the nation that they're under. Well, it's the same people that went out and raided them in the first place. So then the British fleet went out and protected them. But to do that, the merchant ships had to pay them protection money. Mafia. That's all they are, mafia. And this is where also there was created insurance through economics. Insurance is uh, a pirate policy. It's a pirate practice. It was something that was carried over actually from Rome, because early Rome, started going out and sacking other villages, and they would have an emissary or an ambassador from Rome who would then go and say to them, "Hey, we can protect you." But it was the Romans that went out and sacked them, and then another group of Romans, the military, would come in and protect them. But then they're under Roman military rule. So it's a slow burn process of how you get the people corrupted under a law of piracy, where all of a sudden you have people who could say they're good people, they never stole anything in their lives, they wouldn't steal a cent, but they're living on stolen land. They're trading stolen things. This is the corruption of what was created out of Britain that right now has you and everybody else on the planet locked into casino protocols. It was from there that they created the stock exchange. The stock exchange means that you are living off of stolen property, stolen from someone else. What? You feel good about it because you invest in the stock market and you think that, well, the return that you get, hey, like as if you worked for it, you feel good. You made $1 billion. You're a thief because through the stock market, you're stealing it off of somebody else. It's already commodified through the corruption that we identified, which was established for thousands of years in the non-native society, of going in first, sacking a community, causing political chaos, and then saying, okay, I'll protect you. But to protect you at a cost. You now give me your stuff, your goods. Which before that, we used to trade. But you know what? Rome and Britain had nothing to trade with everybody else. Nothing that anybody else would value. They had nothing to trade because the only thing that Rome and Britain values is gold. Now, people had gold, people utilized it, whatever, but you know what? Everybody knows, whoever had gold, that you can't eat it. That nobody eats gold. That at the end of the day, when your kids are starving, you're not going to grind up gold and feed it to them like baby food. No. You need natural, real things that people need to survive. That's when it was trade. When it came into commodification and it was things that were unnecessary, that are not a vital part of human existence, which, because over here I got an apple tree, over there you got a cherry tree. Well, I got no cherries. You don't have apples. We need, both of us need that. So that was trade. Commodification now is where I take the bark off of your tree, or I cut your tree, your cherry tree, and I make something. I turn it into something else. And so this is where commodification began. This is where the corruption of the stock markets come from. The insurance is the biggest corruption ever in the history of humanity. And I can say that here economically, this is where it happened. It stems from Britain. They got the oldest insurance houses on the planet. You know, this is where it was created. But insurance actually comes from the church, because insurance, you're paying for what? Who are you paying? You're paying somebody else for some service for nothing. You're giving somebody money for nothing. This is where you're hoping that if something happens, well, you'll be off the hook. You'll be covered. This is where it comes from religion, where again it was that guy in the street. I forget his name. We talked about him last week, where he knew that Jesus was there in the town square, and he wanted to see him. He was a short guy. He was the tax collector. He climbed up the tree to see Jesus, and he says that, well, once he seen Jesus, that it changed him, and he says, well, no, I realized that in tax collecting that he was doing harm. He was doing wrong. And so what he said was, this is where he created insurance. He says to make restitution for the wrongs that he did, for every so much amount that he collected off of people, he's going to donate. He's going to donate back. And who did he donate it back to? To the structure. What's the structure? The structure that was the church, that was the establishment. So he collects money off of people as a tax collector, which means he's a thief, and he doesn't give the money back to the people. Instead, he says, I am going to donate for every dollar that I steal off of you. I'm going to donate to the church 50 cents or 10 cents or whatever. This is where he created an insurance, because in turn for him donating that, what was allotted to him? What was given to him? A special consideration from the church. And that now, where it was identified he was corrupted before that, which would mean that in the church, certain rights cannot be performed over you. Death rights won't be performed over you, even marriage, even if you wanted back then, the church was everything. If you wanted to resolve issues, you had to have audience with either the priest or the pope. And if you had audience, then you'd have your issue addressed or resolved. So to do that, it's the amount of money that you give. So it's insurance. You gave money to ensure that you're not going to go to hell. That's where that concept of insurance, where it comes into the world through religion, through the corruption of the imbalanced mind and male dominance. Anyways, if there's anything on that, if not, we'll continue.
Hi, my name is Celine. My mother is, I'm the daughter of Florette, the granddaughter of Cecile, and the mother of Roxanne. There was also the Federal Reserve that was made up by Britain. And how it came about was that when there was banks before, where people would put their money, and the media started to work around, and they noticed that the Rothschild noticed that the media was really affecting everybody's opinion. So when they would put something in media, the people would react to what was written. And they noticed that if they put something that was a lie, they would also respond. So they respond that they they put in the media that the bank would probably not be able to pay back all the money to the ones that put money in there because they went bankrupt. So of course, what happened? Everybody went to the bank and tried to get their money back. And of course, because it was asked to be done in one shot, they couldn't all give back the money. So the Rothschild invented the Federal Reserve to say that they would protect people. It was again a protection, just like that insurance. They would protect the people by having the Federal Reserve. But all of the time, it's them all running that, and for them to make, of course, more money. So with the interests and all the levels that they play with, that's another corruption of the non-native people.
Yeah, when you consider that we're talking about things here, the corruptions that are rooted in way back, a long time ago. They're rooted way before anybody today was alive, way before your grandparents were alive. All these things are rooted in the corruptions of male dominance that started with the religified mind. So we're going back thousands of years to the root of these corruptions. The Fed is not something that was created in, what was it, 1924, I think? Something like that. It's not something that all of a sudden came into existence in 1924. It is something that was a continued policy of every king, every ruler, every dictator, where you know that if you're in an empire, let's say, let's go back to the time of the Persian Empire and the Roman Empire. You know that if you were in the Roman Empire, if you had Persian gold, you were put to death. There's no way that somebody in the Roman Empire would be allowed to have Persian gold, and vice versa. And no matter what empire you were in, if you had gold from another empire, you would be put to death because that is treason. Because how would you get gold from another emperor? If you are, let's say, you're in my empire, and Celine, all of a sudden I find you got Stone's gold from Stone's empire. How did you get that? You're in my empire. How did you get that gold from him? Explain it to me. How could you possibly get that gold from my enemy? There's only one way. He's not going to give you gold. You got nothing to trade because you know any trade, anything that's going to happen with him is going to go through me if I'm the emperor. And so you know that that's not going to happen. People who had gold, foreign gold, were always viewed as treasonous. And it's always been anybody who's committed treason, you don't even get a trial. You are just put to death. So that gold from another empire is not something that was a reality. Like today, money traders. Again, we'll go back to when uh, the rabbis were trading, were exchanging gold. They were the coin exchangers, exchanging gold coins from this empire to that empire. It's the same as the stock market today. They were the ones setting the exchange rate. How in the hell could the Jewish people have been permitted to have do that within any one single empire? Because to do that, you'd have to have a land base where you're doing that from. Where were they doing it? They were doing it in Israel. They were doing it in the temple. So how did they get to do that in the temple with foreign gold? Well, we talked about that the other day as to how it was not the Jewish people, because the Jewish people were always condemned. They were always ostracized. They were not allowed to own land. That anywhere where they were at, they were not citizens. They were not capable of being able to get gold from this person or that from this empire or that empire. So it wasn't the Jewish people. It was, as a matter of fact, the Zionists, the Freemasons that hid behind the Jewish people. Hid behind, they used religion to hide behind them. And this is the people who were doing the trade in the temple. It was, again, everybody knows, It was the rabbis doing that trade. So when the rabbis were doing that trade, you're looking at an exact duplicate of what you have today. It's called the stock market. Well, the stock market was built on that. But to do that, to have that trade, you have to have a central bank. You have to have a central banking system. And when you got that, that undermines my empire, undermines his empire, it undermines all the empires. So eventually the empires will crumble, but the central bank will rise in power. The central bank is something that every empire had. It was called your treasury. You had your treasury. Who built your treasury? Because back then your treasury was not, it's not like today where you have electronic money. You can take out money anytime, take out your wealth. There, back then, you had an actual part of your castle or your palace, whatever, where it was called your treasury. A place that was so secure you would keep your gold, your silver, your all things like that people value, pearls, all that kind of stuff. That's a central bank because all the people in that one empire have their wealth being funneled through that uh, that treasury, which the emperor is in control of. But this is where people lost control. This is where the Fed is uh, the evolution of the individual treasuries, where the Fed, those Freemasons, the Zionists, became the money traders, which was impossible. Again, how could they have done that? How did they get gold from this place and that place? Again, the only way they got it is because they were the Freemasons. And how they got it was through corruption. The corruption, which they were, is that okay? They would build your empire, they build your castle or palace, and they build his castle or palace. And when you do that, because you're a Freemason, because you have knowledge of geometry, you have that sacred knowledge of the sacred mathematics, which they corrupted. And when they did that, they became the only ones who could the Freemasons work with stone, and so they became the ones that would build the empires. They would know where your treasury is. They would know even where your bedroom is, the king or the emperor. They would know where your daughter's room is. They would know all the secrets about your palace. Know all the back doors that they put in. Imagine this. Today you have a computer programmer, that they build all kind of back doors. They build all kind of firewalls and back doors into every room in your house. So just extrapolate that from what existed way back then, where the Freemasons made back doors to the program that they created. The program is the warring agenda. It was them, the Freemasons, the Zionists, that set the warring agenda. Because what they did is they took the information from you where your treasury is, and they came over here and they sold it to the other empire. And the other empire could get into your treasury through the back doors that only the one who created it knows of. And so you don't know after that. How did somebody get into your treasury to steal all your treasure? You know what? Back then, people were very superstitious. And so this is when they started employing people who would be called their spiritual leaders, rabbis. And those would be the very people who would then consult them and tell them, oh, you have to do this. You know what you got to do? You got to build a stronger castle. You got to build a stronger doorway to your treasury. And of course, who's going to be the ones that are going to build it? Them. They're the ones that are going to build it. So everybody in the world has become bamboozled into this war uh, reality that everybody's locked into. And to be locked into that, you have to have a central bank that takes money from all of you, that is under control of the source of your existence. So the Fed is something that existence, I think it was 1924 or whenever, it was around that time. It's only, you think it's only of recent, but no, it is a continuous thing that has been there for thousands of years. Okay, if there's nothing on that, we're going to continue.
I think it's the distance because here it's okay.
No.
Disconnected là?
No, that one too, and then the what?
Let me look on YouTube because it's more stable there. Maybe it's Facebook.
You want me to reset it?
Non, attends! Laisse-moi le dire. Non, non, mais c'est parce que je parle, puis tu écoutes pas ce que je dis. Live, YouTube Live is okay, so it's Facebook. YouTube Live is stable, it's okay. So it's probably Facebook.
You know why Facebook right now? You know, Zuckerberg.
Ça, tu parles de ça, c'est pas vrai? Comme ça. Pour. Si tu t'approches trop, ça va rentrer. Si tu veux switcher, tu t'en vas complètement de l'autre côté. Back. It's not the internet, it's Facebook, I'm sure of it. Because YouTube is okay.
I restarted it, and every time it lasted less than a minute, and it cut off again. It just says video live stop.
Yeah, maybe it's Facebook. I
This is
just
just,
checked a few minutes ago and it was okay.
Just additional information quickly that the fellow's name that you were speaking about, his name is Zacharias. He was a short man. He had to get up in a tree to see Jesus coming. But it's Jesus, according to the story, that says, you got to come down from that tree because I got to go to your place and talk to you. So what he does is he goes to his place and he's happy to come down from the tree. So he gets exchanges this man. And he says, what have you been doing? He said, okay, everybody knows I'm a tax collector. Now, even today, but back then, it was the worst job for everybody else in society. It's the worst job that anybody could be performing. Nobody liked the tax collector. It's like almost be cursed. You could have money, but you could be like cursed to do that job. What I've understood in this is that Jesus, you got it. Well, he said, okay, I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop because he's asked, are you doing something wrong? He says, yes, I'm doing something wrong. I am collecting taxes. This is not right. See, so he engages, he pledges to stop, but his example of like how to stop it is not to, stop using money or whatever. That's the only thing he knows. That's the only thing he thinks he can repair his mistakes with. But he does engage to stop. Okay. Those that are angry at Jesus, it's not this guy that has to stop his job. And even he makes the wrong pledge, but says, I'm going to pay back 4 times what I took from these people to each one of the person that I took it from. Okay, but he's not as wrong as the people that are after Jesus, and who is after Jesus because he's telling this man to stop what he's doing, are the rabbis. So that's what I just wanted to add. It's when this is put forward in liturgies of the churches that I know, it's never discussed to this point. That's one of the weaknesses that I see. If it was discussed to this point, I think we would learn a lot more. So.
It's It's not the internet, Marie. Because YouTube is okay. And here is this street book the problem.
But later on, you can share the YouTube. You're sure the YouTube is still there? Okay, well, we're going to continue. Something that you just said there is it brings us to a point of discussion, like what you said, where those two sides, they're bipolar because they're the same. The Jews and the whatever they call the Palestinians or whatever they were back then, whatever they called them, they're the same people. They became bipolarized because of the conduct of the rabbis. Because when Jesus came in and said into their marketplace where they were doing the trading, he disrupted all their coins, threw them in the air, and said, "If you continue this, it's going to destroy your children." He was right, of course, but you know that who was it that picked up the coin? Anybody? Can you guess? Who picked up that coin? It was the rabbi. So here today, like, well, who's the rabbis? They're supposed spiritual. They cut again. They're supposed spiritual leaders. No, their spiritual leaders agreed. They knew, yes, this was going to destroy their children, but the spiritual leaders still picked up that coin. So that tells you one thing right there. This is the source of their bipolarization. Which let's identify it more concise to what it is. It's the schizophrenia that has overpowered them. It's self-inflicted schizophrenia because of that process. And when they get to that point, those two imaginary sides, which are one, they will always blame the other. So the Jews always blame the Christians, and the Christians always blame the Jews. Now, who are the Christians in this? They're not even the ones that are the Palestinians. So it's not only a bipolarism, it's a schizophrenicizing of all society. When you're thinking of a couple of thousand years ago, in that place they call Israel, in Palestine, well, let's see, were there any white people there? There's no white people there. They're not from there. If there was white people there, they were sticking their nose into business where it didn't belong. They were out of their place. So how do you get Jews, Christians, Palestinians, all out of one group of one person, all from one place? They've been schizophrenicized, but they all blame each other for whatever is their corruption. This is what makes the witchcraft complete upon them. The witchcraft of mind manipulation. And mind manipulation was done through gold. That's how they manipulated the minds of the people. What gets you to the point of where now today, where those different schizophrenic identities are all one. The Christians want the Palestinians out of Palestine to hasten along this supposed, the way the Christians see the prophecy that's going to happen to the Jews, or the correction that will take place once the Palestinians are out of there. So one of them, this schizophrenic identity, wants the other two to fight. The other one of them doesn't want to fight at all. One of them, that's all they want to do is fight and kill. This is a complete schizophrenic person identity that is stemmed out of that one place. And it's because the people did not have the provisions in which to protect themselves. They did not have the structure of great law of peace. They had access to it, and the fact is somebody, one of those people there, one of those identities, could have provided. All they had to do was when the Romans said, hey, whatever that is, I forget, I think it was once a month they would give the Jews the right to say that one of their people that are detained, that are scheduled for crucifixion, that the Jews could choose one. to receive pardon from that guy from Rome. What the heck was his name? Yeah. So the reality is that if the Jews would have chosen correctly, but they didn't. You know, there was a choice between two people. One was this guy they call Jesus, which, if everybody wants to believe he was peace, okay, he's the one there representing peace. Who's the other one? Does anybody know who the other one was? No, it was Brutus, a killer. Barnabas? I thought it was Brutus. Barnabas? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. All right, Barnabas, but he was a murderer. He was somebody that was already known as a killer. So when it came time for the Jews, given the right by Pontius Pilate, right? Pontius Pilate gives them the right. Okay, now this month you can pardon any of the people that are set for crucifixion. When they chose Barnabas, the murderer, they chose for everybody, all the people that were there. They chose war over peace. And this is the reason why, from that place, there, so called Israel or Palestine, that is the source of war on the planet. That is the black hole on the planet. Because from there, the lie is the misrepresentation, the identity theft is that they're good when they have never been good. Never. There has never been a God that came out of that place. The only God that came out of there is the God of war. Because ever since they pulled their concept of God out of there, they have been locked in non-stop state of war. And you can only be locked in that nonsense if the people actually wish for that. They want that. They wanted their personal wealth that Rome was showing them. So the reality is of the Jewish people, of everybody there, Israel, everybody, they were captives of Rome, as was identified, but under which policy? It was under the policy, the wartime maneuver of fifth column. They were all kidnapped, meaning their minds were all consumed by what Rome was showing them. What was Rome showing them? Gold, riches. And so they were all had their minds poisoned and successfully changed through that wartime measure of the fifth column, wartime maneuver of a fifth column, where you kidnap your enemy, raise them in Roman court, and then once they're raised into that ways of which is thievery, mafia, all of that. Once they're raised in that, you send them back into their community, and they will create the exact same structure that the Roman Empire had within them. They will create a faith. They will create religion. They will create all the things that lock people into war. Anyway, so that is because, again, the people do not have any part of their identity protected. They have no rites and ceremonies protected. Okay, let's see, where was I? Are we going? Was that? Okay, 1 from 100. When? 99? It shall be the duty of the clan mothers and chiefs, managers of the Thanksgiving festival, to do all that is needed for carrying out the duties of the occasion in accordance with the outcome of the previous bowl game. No, we already read that. I didn't finish the bottom. Okay, there's yeah. The recognized festivals of Thanksgiving shall be the midwinter, the opening and closing of the maple, which is the sugar making, the seed and medicine, corn planting, the raspberry, the strawberry, the corn hoeing, the little festival of the green corn, the string bean, Thanksgiving, the great festival of the ripe corn, and the complete Thanksgiving of the harvest. Each nation's festivals shall be held in their longhouse and shall hold the same importance as the midwinter. So this tells you that for ceremony, the political leaders are supposed to gather the people and hold council for ceremony. We are going to carry this out and give thanks for these things that are not something that is created by us to say, oh, this is what we worship or something like that. No, we function within the cyclical motions that are naturally occurring upon our Mother Earth. So, you know what you give thanks for? That, well, you know, you want to feed your kids. How are you going to feed them? You got to plant. So when it comes time for planting, that's a sacred thing because it feeds our children. It's not a religious construct. It's a real cyclical thing within creation. So within the great law of peace, there is no religious stupidity where it is a man-made thing that we follow, that we give thanks for, or whatever. No, it is our Mother Earth that shows us what cycles are of which we must give thanks for. And when you are following the garden, you will find that yes, there is differences with the green corn, with the ripe corn. You can hear that right now, and if all you ever do is buy your corn at the grocery store, you're not going to know the difference between green corn and ripe corn. You'll have no clue, and therefore you'll have no clue what it represents within creation and the change that it identifies of the cycles, and how when the change of the cycles in creation happen, the changes happen within you. You adjust to those cycles also. Right now, look at the way we're dressed, or lack of being dressed. I don't have a jacket on, but at harvest time, I'm probably going to have a jacket on. I'm going to have socks on, pants. So the fact is that the cycles change us. We are changed. It's not the same thing all the way through to say that, well, those cycles are not real. No, those cycles adjust and they make us make real adjustments to it. So when something like that happens, it's fall time. You got to acknowledge that. It's when it's time to close up the garden. If you don't acknowledge that, you don't work with that cycle, you're not getting your food. You're not going to provide for your children and other things like the things that you need, the vitamins, the good things that are given to us by all the things that are identified, like sugaring the trees, taking the maple waters. You in the non-native society got no clue as to what that power is until the first time that you tap that tree and you drink that water right out of the tree. And then you will know and you will feel how it changes you, how you become adjusted. You become adjusted to the evolution of creation. It brings you up to the minute evolved is the same way that the creation is, and it happens at that cycle. As everything goes to sleep in the winter and the fall time, then it awakens again, which renews its cycle. And so you know that as it renews its cycle, it has evolved. And so when you take that medicine with that particular part of that evolution, you are evolving with that evolution. Okay, nothing on that. We'll continue. Okay, 100. When the Thanksgiving for the green corn comes, the special managers, both the men and the women, shall give it careful attention and do their duties properly. When the ripe corn Thanksgiving is celebrated, the chiefs of the nation must give it the same attention as they give to the midwinter Thanksgiving. So, as you know, the midwinter is the only thing that is set in stone. It is 5 days after that moon of this Iskarna, and we all know what that means. So, 5 days after that is always set in stone. It's not set on, like, if you go by January 1st, that is not a reality of creation. That's a Gregorian creation, a man-made creation. But if you go by the moon, which the year is divided into 13 equal moons, when you go by that, your midwinter begins according to that. But if you go by January 1st or whatever, December 31st, your midwinter, your new year is going to be over here. It's going to be over there. It's going to keep changing. Well, in relation to the moon, it won't keep changing. It'll stay fixed. But in relation to the Gregorian calendar, the moon will always change because the Gregorian calendar is a false construct. So you follow the moons, you are going to be in accordance with that cycle. You're going to know exactly where your midwinter is. And so therefore that is always set in stone. But every other ceremony is not set in stone. It is going accordance to where it is in that cycle. So we don't do the strawberry ceremony until the strawberries are ready. We can't say at the midwinter, okay, we're gonna do the strawberry on June 15th. Your strawberries may not be ready on June 15th. They may be ready before, maybe after, but you can't set it in stone like that. You have to do it only when the strawberries are ready. You're not going to celebrate um, a person coming to your house until they get there. You're not going to celebrate before, and you're not going to celebrate after. You're going to celebrate when they get there, when it's ready. This is what today the world calls Indian time. You know what that is? That's the correct time. The correct time. Okay, if there's nothing on that. Okay, we're into the installation song. Wampum 101. The song used in installing the new chief of the Confederacy shall be sung by Taradaho, and it shall be the Hi Hi. And what it means is when he's singing that song is that he's gathering the people to identify. His song is that it is good, that a broom, a great wing, is given to me for a sweeping instrument to clean the house. And when the house is clean, then you know it is a time of renewal. So what is the time of renewal, ceremonial wise, to utilize this broom that is given? It's when the person dies. That's when it's ready. So when that person dies, to us, it is a death. It is not a death. It is a rebirth. So it's when that person is being reborn, leaving from one realm and being born into the next. And that is a time of celebration. You do not celebrate them. You do not do the condolence until that time. So that is on the same levels of the ceremonies. When the humans follow their cycles, it is time, like any one of us who there's been people who have died before us, parents, whoever. It's when their cycle is complete and when they are ready to be born from this world into the next. That's when we celebrate. And so that's the reason why that song and those words that are sung, that very happy this broom has been given to sweep away any of this dust and dirt or anything that may have accumulated and in their life, that now it is taken away from the fire and now you're replacing. 102. Whenever a person properly entitled desires to learn the pacification song, he is privileged to do so, but he must prepare a feast at which his teachers may sit with him and sing. The feast is provided so that no misfortune may befall them, for singing the song when no chief is installed could bring misfortune. That's pretty straightforward. Okay, 103. Protection of the house. A certain sign shall be known to all the people of the 5 nations, which shall denote that the owner or occupant of a house is absent. A stick or a pole in a slanting or leaning position shall indicate this and be the sign. Every person not entitled to enter the house by right of living within it, upon seeing such a sign, shall not approach the house, either by day or by night, but shall keep as far away as their business will permit. So, neither by day or by night. There's a reason why that is said. Because here is the reality of this world. In this world, everybody was provided for. Nobody ever went hungry. Nobody was ever without shelter. And how this was is that, in particular, from where we are now, Ganawagi, from here to Akwesasne, that's our cornfield. Our cornfields went from, and Ganawagi was way down, like by past Broussard, like in the Sorel Islands. So our cornfield went from the Sorel Islands past where Akwesasne is now. And it went on both sides of the river, with where, as uh, the Jesuits wrote, when they came here, they could ride for 7 days. 7 days riding a horse through our cornfield. So what that means is that there was people all along that path from here to Akwesasne. And when there's people there, they need shelter. But they're not living there. They're living in Ganawagi or Akwesasne. Well, you know what? When you're halfway in between and you're tending to the corn and you get tired, well, you need a place. You need shelter. So everywhere there was houses, there was shelter, little longhouses, little lodges that could shelter the people. And it was always by the water, and there was always food there. And so, not only food like corn, beans, and squash, but there was also meat. And how that meat or fish was there is that if I was there, I would prepare smoked meat or smoked fish, seasoned meat, and that could be kept over time. And in these lodges, there would be food because what is also considered is that if my family is going from here to Akwesasne and they need shelter. It starts raining. You get hungry. You want to stop. Well, there's no McDonald's drive-through that you're going to stop at. You're going to go to one of these lodges and you're guaranteed. There's fresh water. There's corn. There's beans. There's squash. There's all kind of fruits, vegetables. There's also fish. There's meat that is there in that lodge without anybody living there. And these lodges, where there's nobody living, everybody knew that there was food available, there was water, there was shelter available. Now, those lodges, you can go there day and night, day or night, because whenever you needed shelter, who knows when it is. If it's in the morning, if it's at night, there's no rule to say you only need shelter at this time or whatever. And so, those shelters, this is where this rule does not apply. It identifies specific what the symbol is. We would not have to have a symbol if those other houses for the public did not exist. You have a symbol because to identify, you do not go in there. As it says, that your business, you got no business there, you don't go in there. But there are those shelters that do not have that on there. It's there for everybody. And so the reason why protection of the house is identified here is because we are a public people. We live together in a longhouse. We take care of each other. We provide food for each other, shelter, water, all the human necessities that you know that you need to survive is provided for you by the entire nation. And so the entire nation also has places where, you know what, it's not your business to go there because I live there. You can go over there, but you can't come where I live. And so if I'm not there, if I'm gone, I could be gone for a moon. As long as that stick is there, everybody knows you go as far away as possible. You don't even go up to that lodge. You don't even hang around there because if you do and other people see you, they will know you don't have business there. What are you doing there? It would cause suspicion. And where there is suspicion, there's the perception of corruption. Where there is the perception of corruption, there is corruption, even if the person is not corrupt. As long as there is the perception, then that's all it needs in the minds of other people to know, hey, there's something corrupt going on here. So, anyways, that's the reason why it's identified protection of the house because we are public people who provided public houses, shelter, food, all of that stuff for all peoples. Okay, so We're going to end there at 105 because now we're going into the funeral addresses. And that is heavy. We do not want, oh, did I say 105? 103, 104. Okay, so we're going into funeral addresses tomorrow. That's heavy. We're not going to continue in that today. We're going to rest up and be prepared for that. Prepare your minds. Funeral address, right? Death rights. This is not an easy thing. So be prepared for tomorrow. Okay, now the only thing is now we're going to pass the feather around based on what was said today. If there is anything that you wish to address, even if it's not from today, something that you maybe heard of 10 years ago that you feel is connected to today. Now is your time. We'll pass the feather on. If you don't have anything to say, well, then just keep it.
Hi, my name is Syrian. The other thing I would have liked to add concerning the economics, there was a time, a long time ago, that people that would buy oil wells, and they were very rich. They used the media to abolish the hemps, because the hemps was known to do clothes, to heat your house, to heal yourself, and to do so many things that the economic of hemps would have destroyed the economic of oil. And a lot of very important and wealthy people owned those oil rigs and oil wells. They had projected that they would do heat the houses and run their cars with those. So that's why they started to use the media again, and to say all kinds of things against the hemp, how it was making the people not in their good minds, and that it was something to destroy if because the mothers would lose their sons in this corruption and all that. But all the time it was just to preserve their oil wells, so that they would keep rich. So it's another detail in our life of non-native that we were again misled, and the media is doing that at a lot of different occasions. It's still doing it today. So it's just a detail I wanted to add, which I think it's very important. Thank you.
You can see me coming through. Okay, I wanted to start speaking in a way I never start speaking. It's saying hello. I'm Ellen. I'm the daughter of Emmanuel, the granddaughter of Janine, and the godmother of Jean. Yeah, actually, it's the first time I begin to speak like that here. I think it's seeing Elizabeth coming back last night and saying that she had a message from her mother, and saying that maybe it was the fact of repeating that she speaks before she speaks, that she's the daughter. And actually, I thought to myself that I think I tried to heal a lot already the relationship with my mother, but I wanted to say it like that, and I think before I was afraid actually to refer me being present in that line or something, because I always wanted to avoid the things to avoid, or to get free from the thing that I don't recognize as right. And there are many. But I believe that that kind of process of saying that is doing the job also of reading the line. Yeah, I know it's not directly connected with where we said today, but in a way, yes. I arrived at the afternoon, but in the morning I had a lot of messages coming from friends or that was related with fear. Also, I saw an article on Facebook saying that a woman who is a scientist who is approaching to prove that there is a parallel universe. And I wanted to share that with you. I sent the article to my blog. Maybe it's in French. Maybe we can translate that in the evening. I don't know. And yes, maybe I will show you. I received a drawing from a friend of mine that is that has a place in my heart. And it's funny because I drew something this morning, the morning of on the other side of the world, the ocean, and it's the three fires, and we call it the three fires, the twin sisters. So I would like to show you this drawing after. And thank you for all the things that I learned today through listening to Recital.
She spoke out of order.
I saw her, I think it was yesterday morning when I fed her. She was really frisky, Cookie. I hadn't seen her like running around in the crowd just before she got her hay. I thought it was a really good sign, and her coat looked so healthy, you know. So I said, "Wow, she's telling me a message like rhubarb, you know, very pleasant experience." Um, this is just to confirm. I hope it's what I'm using as a correct word. They're confirming what I heard in my mind, words of truth spoken. That we talked about the other side of the world, of say the Middle East. It was said earlier that not everybody, whether you're, I won't even name the nations. Uh, what's being addressed here is not to condemn a nation, but condemn corruption. And that corruption, if we're not applying the law, it could be anywhere in the world. And it could be in me, it could be in you, it could be in the other side of the world if we're not doing what we know. The hardest thing is, but also the easiest thing is to apply the law to ourselves, to myself. Um, it's just to make sure that the people that might not have had much experience in hearing these recitals could just hear something. It's it's condemnation of all that religion, that spirituality, or that race, or whatever. I know it's not that. It's a corruption, and I think we all know. I don't think anybody is uh, needing to be uh, taught two or three times that that money corrupts. Uh, Power corrupts also. So, or money is power, and controlling time is a form of, you know, power, control over others, and corruption too. So I'll try and be mindful of not speaking more than here. Last couple of things. It was the guy's name was Barabbas, not Barnabas. That was my mistake. His name was Barabbas. The man that was Barabbas. So I'm not pronouncing it correctly. Barabbas. He was saved, and Jesus was sacrificed. by Pontius Pilate, according to what we are, told. Apparently, there's archaeologists that are pretty able to verify, a certain number of things, not maybe a number of things, but I just want to think about the people that are suffering, but here especially, because we're on Turtle Island. But I think there's so much that the rest of the world can learn from the true experiences of the people, the application of the law here. It can work in Palestine too. I can only say I totally believe that. I can't say I can prove it to you or that I've done it, so that this is like substantiated fact that I'm giving you. But my gut instinct is that uh, for people of, say, Jewish nation that say they're of a Jewish race, of people of the law, there's something that should be discussed. I think more openly. That's up to that nation, that people. But if the law is applied, I think the truth will come out. So again, those that had their fingers in the collective jar or a cookie pot or something, they're getting everybody condemned. They're showing a bad example, but they're giving a pretense for someone else to attack the whole people. And I think that's how the collective responsibility here, like looking and having a critical mind, a constructive but a critical analysis of what the media does in 2019. Media can destroy, and they make money off of it. But as individuals, me too. If I don't watch what I'm doing, even by accident, I can hurt somebody, and I won't apologize in advance. But if I need to, I will, because I'm not perfect, and I can make a mistake. But I will try and apply law to myself, and not forget those that haven't had maybe the chance that we have. But thank goodness for media, maybe being used in the right way. Maybe people in there are what I would say of the true Christian expression Palestinians. They're just as poor as the Islamic Palestinians or the lay Palestinians. They're all hit by um, the same money, and power corruption. So I'm trying to think of there are the original um, people of original nation, so to speak, or original beliefs, so to speak, and those original things are still continuing. If we want to listen up, I think we can learn so much, and hopefully there can be some good feedback, because this is such a good communication process. So
Okay, good job, Paul. You want to go do what? The only thing left now is to do the closing for the day. So, uh, who is the speaker today? We forgot we were supposed to. No, sorry. We forgot we were supposed to be doing that and shifting from each day during the closing, like from speaker to speaker. We've been missing that process. Now we're almost at the end of the process, so it's never too late. So we'll just leave it to the Wolf Clan then to whoever their appointed speaker is, or whoever they're going to decide do the closing. It's time to close.
We did that, Stuart, except when Moyageru was there. Because we did that. We switched. When Moyageru is not there, you
Hi, my name is Cyril. I'm the daughter of Florette, the granddaughter of Cécile, and the mother of Roxanne. To close this day without closing the recital, I wish to give my gratitude to all this that is said at the recital to put us on a good path. I want to thank the Sky Woman for giving us our spirit. I want to thank the Grandmother Moon for giving us our blood and all the waters that she moves in to give us the stuff to drink and to wash and all the water that helps us conceive the newborn. I want to thank Mother Earth for making our body, giving us all the food, all the nature that is giving us what it needs to do our shelter. I want to thank all the animal that gives us food, provides for our sustenance. The sea family, the fish that we eat, and all the insects that are around us that are part of the cycles for everyone to be feeding, even the animals, even the bees that brings along the pollen for every plants to be grown. I want to thank the medicine, which I have so much gratitude for. It gives us what we need to heal our soul, to heal our wounds, to heal our mind. I want to thank all the life protectors that are there to help all the life givers from the youngest girl to the oldest elder. In all of this, of course, anything that I could forget, just correct it in your mind, like what you're going to say, and we'll see each other again.
Yeah.